her up. I'm going to let her tell you what she does for a living, but she's given me permission to introduce her as Dr. M. Dr. M, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me today.
No, this is going to be fun. And thank you for gracious enough to let me call you Dr. M. Tell everybody who you are, what you do, where you're working at, as much as you want to. And then we're going to jump right into figuring this thing out living with ADHD.
Sure. Yes. So, my name is Dr. Diana Mercado Marmarash. I'm a family medicine physician, and I'm also an ADHD life coach for physicians. And I also do like guest. I'm a guest at other coaches programs. So some at the residency programs, and then some at have a friend who's a behavioral um, pediatrician, and she
Mm-hmm.
has like a cool program where she engages the coaching aspect. Whatever the medicines are not able to cope, she engages the coaching part of it for kids who are 5 to 12 years of age. And I come in there and I help the parents and the kid, and I talk about emotions and emotional dysregulation and executive function. And so I do a little bit of a lot. It's
Yeah.
like a jack of all trades. They say ADHD is something that causes us to be multi passionate. And so, believe it or not, even before I went into med school, I was a science teacher. So I've done a little bit of a lot, and I
Yeah.
continue to do a lot. But the point of coming today is to show people that, like you said in the introduction, that sometimes ADHD might not even be diagnosed, and you might be labeled as being oppositional, like you're fighting against the adults, right? Or you might be labeled as having too much anxiety, or just being the angry kid, the problem kid, because you can't stay in your chair. But also with ADHD, you might be missed because you might be very smart and you might actually enjoy academics, and you might be missed because your parents just think that this is them being a kid, right? But
Well,
they don't realize that you're probably functioning because you're doing other things like sports or running or painting, something else that is fueling you until you get a little bit older, and all of a sudden whatever structures or tools or systems that you were using that you were not aware you were using are no longer there, and it manifests.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask. It seems to me, before we get into your story a little bit more, it seems to me that ADHD, if you're successful and busy, can almost hide. If you're making a lot of money and you're going on vacations and the kids got ball games and we got church or whatever it is in your life, it can kind of hide. And it's those quiet moments. So, for instance, I have a friend who's pretty successful. And as
Yeah.
long as they're doing something, they are fine. Going to sleep, they can't go to sleep. It's literally, they'll sleep for 45 minutes at a time and their brain just clicks back on and they're up for 30 minutes, they go back to sleep. So I think part of this conversation is also saying ADHD isn't just the fidgety person. It's also could be the high performers, which what is what leads them to deal with anxiety. And you deal with doctors and physicians, that's high performers. You're a high performer and yet you've suffered. So that might be a good place to tell me more how you found out that you needed the ADHD approach, to address that.
Yes. So I I don't know if you could say I got missed, but I guess you could say I got missed. I didn't get diagnosed till I was in my first year of med school. And I think because I didn't know that I had ADHD, I didn't make it mean anything if I had to do things like 10 different ways until I finally got it, or it worked out or whatever. Um, and I think part of my stubbornness, or part of my passion, or part of like whatever it is, it's that impulsivity too, right? Because when you make up your mind that you want to do X, Y, and Z, you're gonna do it even though if it costs you whatever it costs you, because
Mhm.
what you want out of it outweighs the pain that you're going through, and you don't realize that you're going through so much that maybe your classmates are not having to do 10 times as much work as you are because you didn't know any better. Like, this is just the way your life has always been. So I grew up in Mexico till I was 10. And even though I lived in Mexico, I was actually born in Texas because my parents were immigrants and from Mexico, and they would get permission to come to work in different states. Like, they would come to California or they would come to Washington State, and they would work for seasons in the produce fields, and then they would go back. And it was like a big family affair. Like, you could imagine, like caravans of my uncles and aunts, my grandma. So it was a big thing. We would go and we would come. And so my dad was also a construction worker, so he would leave to Houston, Texas, which was like 7 hours from where we would live in Mexico. And so he would go and come. And so after my mom was like, okay, I'm about to have my third kid. I'm not a single parent. Like, we need to do something. We need to all like live together. So we moved to the Valley, South Texas. And even though it was really like an hour and a half difference, it was obviously a big different style of life for me. Yes
Right.
and no, in the sense that it still felt like little Mexico because
Mm.
like everybody around me kind of looked like me, but they were just speaking a different language. And
Right.
so I was pushed back from, instead of being a third grader that I should have been, I was started again in first grade in a program called English Second Language. But again, I was so intrigued and I stayed after school and I did whatever I needed to do. But my parents were also coming to school with me to sit down so I could stay quiet so that I wouldn't disrupt everybody because the teachers didn't know what to do with me because I kept doing my work and they would give me more work, and then I would go interrupt everybody. Not in a rude way. I was just wanting to be social, right?
Right.
And so before you know it, I was skipped up the grades. Like, I did grades in 6 weeks at a time until I finally like got to where I needed to be, and I did fine. But and I it never they never took me to go get tested to see. They just thought I was just curious and I was just a kid and I was just, you know,
Well, and part of that's true, right? I mean, being a kid is being curious and fidgety and learning the rules, and so it can again, it's easy to just get overlooked like that.
And I think also I want to point out that my mom, I think, and I'm sure she has it too, and she's just in denial. You know how it is. But I think the fact that when I would come home, she had a structure ready for me. Like, she would say, okay,
Oh,
Diana, sit down. What homework do you have in that backpack? Let's do the homework right now. You're going to eat the food, and then we're doing the homework. Then you get to play the rest of the day. And so I think she provided that structure to be able to do work first and then play later. But I think that manifested throughout my life because then that's how I became to feel like that's how I was worthy or that's how life went. Like, if I had good grades and I did my work first, then I was worthy, then I was whatever, right? And so when I finally got to college, I graduated number seven out of like 700 in my high school, and I had a scholarship. And granted, the scholarship was for business, not science, because I thought I was going to travel the world and meet amazing people. And little did I mean, even though I got the scholarship for that for a private school, I didn't even last the whole semester. I was kidding myself. I was always wanting to do science, so I switched to science, and and then I got my first C. Oh my God, I didn't know what to do. And I remember talking to the chemistry professor, and I was like, "What is this? I've never seen this. Like, what happened? Like, did you grade it wrong?" Like, I really thought it was his problem, not mine,
right.
right? And he's like, "Well, what are you talking about? A C is average." I was like, "I'm not an average student. What are you talking about?" And so that's when I started investing in tutors and doing different things. And I actually got put on probation for my scholarship because I had to maintain like a B average. And of course, in my mind, like, that's nothing. I mean, I was in high school taking some college classes. I even walked in with like 20 or 30 like college credits before I even walked into college. And so, and I had A's there. So I was like, a B is like a walk in the park. But
Right.
looking back, I didn't realize that there was like a grading systems in your high schools, like, that you have a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like really good school, and I was like at a 2. And I didn't know I was like at a 2 because I didn't know anything. I was just doing whatever they gave me. I was doing it, right? And so then I get to a private university, St. Mary's University, which is like the top of the top. And all of a sudden, you're among the top of your classmates. And then you're like, wait, what? What do you mean, right? And
Yeah.
so you start to adapt. And again, now you don't have your parents telling you you need to do it this way, you need to do it that way. And then you're studying at midnight and eating pizza and going for, donuts, trying to keep you like focus on things, right? And I didn't realize that in high school I was doing so well because I was running 10 miles a day, because of the cross country team. But when I got to college, I didn't have to do that. And I wasn't doing that. And of course, I was gaining not only the freshman 15, but who knows how much, right? And so I wasn't using that as a way to increase my dopamine levels, which, you know, ADHD is low dopamine. So of course, now I can look back and point that out, but as you're going through it, if you didn't think there was anything wrong, then there's anything wrong. And that's the thing, like I don't think I ever felt anxious or depressed. I think I was just frustrated that I wasn't able to perform at the level that I wanted to because I had in the past. At least my grades for me were the reflection of like me being okay or me doing
Right.
everything, right? And
Right.
so my first year was rocky, but then because and I started using tutors and started talking to forming groups so we could study and accountability and all that, then I did better. And I didn't drop the class, even though most people would have said, well, drop the class. I said, the professor told me, just keep it, finish it. And then when you're a senior, come back and take it again. And then you can replace the class. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. I didn't do that. Because by the time I became like a sophomore, junior, senior, like my classes kept getting better and better. Of course, I kept my scholarship, thank God, because I was coming from humble beginnings where, the tuition was like $20,000 a year. And like my dad would earn like $30,000 a year, like that was what we made. So,
Right.
so I was so grateful to have scholarships because a school like that, was expensive and luckily, financial aid was available and grants and all kinds of stuff. So fast forward, I get to med school. But before I got to med school, I wasn't sure if I was going to get to med school right away because I have seen a lot of amazing classmates who had more opportunities. Like they had gone to like some programs in Columbia University doing research, and they had gone all kinds of different things. And I hated research. So I was like, no, you cannot find me with rats. Like I was just not going to do that type of stuff. So I decided the teaching route was going to be my way because I felt it was aligned with what I would eventually need to do. I had to teach my clients or my patients the information. So I figured, why not in high school? If I can get the high school kids to listen to me, then I can get anybody to listen to me.
Absolutely.
That was my thinking. And so I really only did a semester because I managed to do the whole curriculum as a teacher. It took me 4.5 years to graduate instead of the 4 years because I put in all those classes to go the normal route to be a science teacher. And I would tell you, it's funny. I actually failed the academic part of the teacher because you have to do two tests for the teacher. You have to do like the comprehensive how to teach and then the actual material. I missed the material by 1 point, and I was like so mad. I was like, how can I not know high school science if I'm in college? And so they gave me a high school book. Like they're like, read it again and then take the test. And sure enough, I read the book and then I took the test and I like kicked it out of the park. But that just tells you that sometimes we're too confident and that could get us into trouble, right?
Yeah.
Uh, the point is that I taught for a semester and then I got my acceptance. And then when I get to med school, even though I got my acceptance, they told me your test scores are not exactly where we need them to be. So you have to do like a 6 week pre medical school, like summer camp, you
Yeah.
and like a couple of people, like there were like 30 of us, so that we can just get you up to par. And usually those people were the non traditional science students who are maybe like an engineer or a lawyer or something else, that then they're like, oh, I want to be a doctor today, right? And
Right.
so so then I was with them. And so that
Yeah.
was good because then it helped me to have a community before I even got thrown into like what was coming at me. And because I was the first one to go to college and the first one to go to med school, I had no idea what was coming at me. And all I knew was like, okay, this is due one thing at a time. And so I think the reason they're not so strict on who gets to get into med school, in the sense of like what what medical degree, not medical degree, but like what
Academic.
exactly,
Yeah.
like if you're a biology major,
Discipline. Yeah.
art, English, whatever, is because the amount of information they throw at you, like in 1 week they cover like the whole year that I did of molecular science. So like
Well, they're probably just testing your ability, your cognitive ability to absorb information, whether you're coming from the medical, the science, the
exactly.
lawyer.
Can you
Yeah,
think?
how fast can you learn? Yeah,
Can you think? Can you
they're gonna give you water with a fire hose.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
That's how it felt like. So you could imagine that's happening, and then it's my first semester, and my dad had he was young. He got diagnosed with cancer, unfortunately, stomach cancer, and he was 46 when that happened. And they told us, oh, he might have 2 months to live if we do this surgery. It was really spread. Um, we didn't think it was, like, he never told us, so like he just kept thinking like, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. And then he started losing weight and all this stuff, and it turns out that he was a welder, and the material that he was using to weld, he wasn't protecting himself. So it was
Mm.
he was welding at stomach level, and all that kind of genetically happened. Anyways, point is, I wasn't sure if I wasn't doing as well in medical school because I was stressed about that diagnosis, or because I had this pressure of not wanting to flunk out of school because I was the first one to be there, or if there was something else going on. But I will be forever grateful for my roommate who said, Diana, I think you need to go get evaluated. I don't know if it's your current stressful situation that you're in, or if there's something else going on. I see you studying like 80 to 100 hours per week. You would think that you would have a little bit more grasp. She's like, well, she's like, talking to you, I can see you have it. You're not producing it on the test. Something's
Mhm.
going on. Something's like, I don't know what's going on. Go get tested. Maybe you're stressed, maybe you're anxious, you're depressed, maybe something else. And so ADHD was never like in my forefront. I go get a test. It's a neuropsych test, and it was like an 8 hour test. I was 23 at that time, and it was like a 2 day test that added together to like 9 hours. And then I get told I have ADHD. And then I also get told that I was 2 years behind where I should be based on my schooling. And you would have thought that that's the part that I would have been like very embarrassed about or like nervous about. But
Right.
that I was like, whatever, I don't care. Go back to ADHD. That means I'm broken. That means that like I shouldn't tell anybody. That means that they did make a mistake letting me in. Like, so because to me, my grades defined me. So my ability to be smart was what I felt like I had going for me.
Yeah,
And
they were
so,
telling you basically you weren't as smart as you thought you were. You're doing great for somebody that has what you have, and you're like, wait a minute, I
yeah,
don't feel broken. You're kind of going against what my identity is here. And this is a great place because I think from this point forward, everybody will start relating, looking back on what you've been saying. People can probably put themselves in your shoes, whether it's at college, at high levels, or whatever. But moving forward, I want people to understand what you do with this diagnosis moving forward and how it's kind of transformed into you helping other people because now you're faced with this reality. How did you handle that?
yes. So I was faced with that reality, but I don't know if it was because I was a medical student that the physician didn't really explain much, like what I should expect or not expect, or what other resources out there. They probably just assume that I would figure it out. And I was too in my head ashamed of it that I didn't want to tell anybody. Like, I think up to 2 years ago, maybe five people knew I had ADHD because, again, I was blaming myself. And so they put me on medications, and I didn't at that time, I didn't understand how the medications work. I didn't realize that the medication that they gave me would only last a few hours. So while I took the medication for those few hours, I could do so many things. It was like having 25 tabs open, all of a sudden I had five. So I could like focus more. But I didn't realize that it would wear off after a few hours. So instead of me going to go tell the doctor, hey, this is not working, I was afraid that they would take it away because it wasn't working, instead of like adjusting it, because for those few hours I could concentrate. And then if they took it away, I wouldn't have it at all. And then it was
Mm.
around the time where everybody was saying, like, oh my God, people are using or abusing this so that they could get good grades. And so there was all kinds of internal shame and embarrassment and da 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 da. I wasn't told, hey, maybe run, maybe like, and I didn't put that together, but I guess I did it unconsciously. Like, I started going around the across the I went to UT Health Science Center in Houston, and across from there is a really big university that's called Rice University, and they have
Mhm.
like a 3 mile like big loop. And so I would cross the street and I would go walk the loop because it's all shaded with parks, and I would be listening to lectures and stuff. I didn't realize that I was learning actively by using moving, right? And so
Uh,
now I can look back and be like, oh, I self cope with a medication where it was failing you, but at that point I couldn't put it together. Anyways, I muscle my way through it because I was aligned with a passion. Like, to me, it was a privilege to be able to help other people by being a doctor. So the benefit outweigh the, like, the how much the work I had to put in. So
right.
it didn't matter. So because I was aligned with where I was going, I just kept visualizing, okay, I'm studying this book not because the book is fun, but because it means I get to explain X, Y, and Z to my patient. It means da 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 da, da, right? And so I kept thinking of like the reward, like the long-term reward, the long-term reward. And you could imagine, like, so I was 120 pounds when I graduated high school. And then I went all the way to 150 in college. And then before the last year in college, I decided I was going to get back to my 120 before I get to med school. I did that. I get to med school. I go up to like 140 again in med school again because I didn't realize that I was using food to help me cope and different things like that. And so all of this to say that I graduate medical school. I end up doing residency at Baylor, doing family medicine. And at the end of that, I got told, okay, you're no longer a student. Please go see like a psychiatrist. There's thousands here in the medical center. Just pick one. You're a big adult now. You don't need to come to the student clinic.
Right.
And so I did. And unfortunately, I did not do my research in the I just thought any psychiatrist should understand ADHD in professionals or in adults. And unfortunately, it wasn't the case. I walked in. The encounter didn't last more than 2 minutes. The person told me, what are you doing here? You're a physician. You should know better. You outgrow ADHD. You don't need meds. And he walked out. Even though he didn't want to look at my bottle, he didn't want to look at my paper that had, my 20-page paper about the diagnosis of ADHD. And you would have thought I shouldn't have made it mean anything and I could just seek a second, third, fourth opinion. We're in the medical center for, out loud. Like, you could just go see another psychiatrist and maybe at this point look up somebody who specializes in ADHD. But I was too in my head. I was too ashamed that somebody again had told me that just suck it up, buttercup. Like, you
Yeah.
got this far. Like, what do you need help for? Right.
You're a doctor basically. I mean, you've gone through. What are we doing here? Yeah. Again, though, going back to what we said at the beginning, ADHD, from what I understand, is going to present itself in two ways. The person that's very evident that doesn't seem to be able to get ahead, they get in their own way, they seem stubborn, and then there's the people that it can hide behind because they're super successful. And one got diagnosed kind of quickly. The other one, they can kind of hide in their success, like you said, though, and you had these wild ups and downs. Can I make a? I want to come back to your story, but I have a question for you. You said something a minute ago about your ability to focus on long-term rewards kind of helped you. Is that unique in your case? Because I have found, and I've got a very limited, maybe 4 or 5 people, but thinking long term when they've got the impulse control is difficult for a lot of people with ADHD. In other words, yeah, they want to save up the money, but they love buying the bubble gum at the counter, or they want to lose the weight, but they love the food in the moment. So is that unique to you, or is that long term reward thing something that's always been there, or is that come and go too for you?
I think it comes and goes. I don't think it's unique to me. I just it goes back to the dog with a bone. Like when you set your mind to something, people with ADHD will find a way to make
Mm,
whatever you're passionate about work out for you. And it might be getting that car that's kind of crazy expensive, or buying, that trip to Italy or whatever. Other people might judge you for doing something silly, but again, if it's aligned with your purpose, it might be writing that book, it might be like starting that nonprofit thing, or it might be like, being in the board of the school and like changing everything about whatever cause fuels your boat, right?
right.
And so the impulse control, and that's why I think I didn't realize I was trying to sell, like I was using donuts, right? For the
By the way,
short
real
term.
quick, no, real quick, hold on, because you're going to go back. You've talked to one psychiatrist. You're looking for you're going to tell us, finish your journey, and we're going to talk about how you coach people in the next 20 minutes. But let's just be honest. Donuts are fantastic. Let's just let's don't. I myself have a donut fetish,
but
and
but
I'm trying
look,
to be good health. So
it's all
moderation.
about, exactly, it's
Yeah,
all about moderation. That's what I'm
yeah.
saying. I'm not trying to say one or the other, because I love my chocolate, right?
Donuts. Yeah.
But I'm just saying that I didn't have that awareness in that
Right.
moment in time, that those were the things that were helping me or taming me
Right.
in those short bursts, enough to get me to the next burst,
There
if
were
that makes
little
sense.
bridges between the moments. And just so you know, if we have more of these conversations moving forward, we'll get it sponsored by a donut company, and that'll be great.
Awesome.
Okay. Keep going. I'm sorry.
And chocolates.
Chocolates and donuts. We'll be set. Okay, so you went to your first psychiatrist, or your first, they didn't really help you at all. And did you retreat and just go back to the same old, or did you try to find a second one?
No. So that's where the story gets interesting. I bought into whatever that person told me and ignored my diagnosis for 10 years until the
Mm,
pandemic hit, COVID hit. And granted, I kept trying to find ways to help myself. And sometimes it was through podcasts, sometimes it was through books that I would never read. Like I was trying really hard to figure out, how can I adult? Why is it that I can go and do this amazing thing at work, but then I come home and I'm just like spent, right? And I
right.
felt so guilty and so ashamed. And pandemic hits, and at this point, this is 2020, and I was really mad because I was like, why do I have to make like a will for my 1 and 2 year old at that time? Because I went into medicine to help people. I didn't go into medicine to put my family at risk. That's how I felt. Like no longer was it, if I get sick, it was, I'm going to bring it home and they're all going to get sick. And granted, this was when several people, and I saw firsthand patients and family members passing away. And I
Right.
was not, it was not a good place, because I think I was already sub functioning to the best of my abilities. And then all of a sudden, I'm being asked to do all these things. And it was really pushing all the buttons. And
Mm,
so in one of the podcasts I was listening to, and I was listening to podcasts like The Slob Comes Clean and all kinds of different things, because I really wanted to learn to adult. Like I
yeah.
didn't know why I didn't want to do the damn dishes or do the laundry or whatever, right? Like I was like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
and so I listened to a podcast that it was actually five physicians talking about like life coaching. And I was like, at first, I was like, over there, I was like, what is that? What are they going to tell me? Work harder? Like, they don't know that I already work hard enough? Like, what do they know about my life? Like, I was really, and again, I didn't realize all these thoughts were me just leaving from a place of reaction to whatever was coming to me, and me being mad that I didn't have a way to self regulate or a way to set boundaries, because we get into this innate people pleasing tendencies because we don't want to
Mm.
be rejected, because then that feels painful. But at the same time, I didn't realize I was using like white little lies. Instead of saying like, no, I can't come to this party because I'm tired, I would say, oh, I'm on call. And that way, like, it was, I was getting away with it, because, and then they would ask me, how was your call? And I'd be like, which call? Like, then I would get myself in trouble because I forgot I had told him, right? And
Right.
so, and so then I decided, okay, something has to change. And I joined the program, and it was through there that it was my first awareness of, okay, ADHD is just a neutral circumstance. It's just a neutral fact.
So you
It's
joined an ADHD group or a coaching group?
a coaching group.
Okay.
It
Okay.
was called Empowering Women Physicians,
Okay.
and it was meant to give you like credits, like CME credits, which are like clinical medical education credits that we need to maintain our licenses.
Right.
So in my mind, it was like, okay, whatever, I'm gonna make this investment. I need to have credits anyways. Let me see how what I can learn about coaching. I was just curious, and so we did this questionnaire, and in my mind, I was not burned out. But when I did the questionnaire, I was like, wait, what? What does that show? I was like, so me being moody and irritated, oh, that's burnout. Okay. I thought that was just like me being a physician, or me like life normal. Like, what do you expect? Being married, having two kiddos, being the clinical medical director, being the chief medical officer at the nursing home. Like, I just had so much on my plate that I thought that was the normal state of life, right?
Right.
And so then through that course, I that's when I started to realize that for me, ADHD, what was the solution and the problem, and that it had to be with me, that in recognizing that I shouldn't be ignoring it, then I could become curious and learn more about it. And then I started investing in myself to go get an ADHD coach. And so that made the whole difference in having the life aspect of it, but then normalizing it even more, being around a community where this is their norm. Like, chronic time awareness is not me just trying to like be rude to people, or me interrupting people is not me trying to interrupt people. It's just a way for me to not want to forget things.
Yeah.
So
Well, and two, because I want to kind of transition from here. I've got a couple specific questions. I think you said you have a hard out here in about 15 or 20 minutes, about 15. So I want to make sure we get some stuff in. If you're okay, I don't want to hijack it, but how did you come, or what is your opinion now on the medicine versus the skill sets that you teach now? Because you now are a coach for high performers yourself. And maybe we can do a second conversation more diving into that. But I want to make sure people understand that medicine is not, like you said, the magic bullet, but it also is not something that's evil and bad.
yes, exactly. So I started doing um, the coaching, and it forever changed the relationship that I had with myself, because I
Mm.
was my worst inner critic. And I started to see that I needed to have compassion, that I was doing the best that I could with the tools that I had, and that I shouldn't be um, not giving myself credit for everything that I had accomplished. Because
Yeah.
even though you would look back and you would have thought, she's a physician, she's married, da, da, da. Like, in my mind, I felt like I was half functioning in all the areas of my life, and I felt like like crap because I wasn't showing up
Well,
like the person I wanted to.
yeah.
And
Is that a little
so
bit of that imposter syndrome? Like I'm here, but I don't deserve to be here almost?
yeah, so it was imposter syndrome mixed with the fact that even though like I kept telling myself I should be able to do X, Y, and Z, because I was, but I was at the same time masking how hard I was
Wow.
working, because I was working like 20 or 30 hours outside of work. And I didn't want people to know I was doing all that extra work unpaid for, because then they would really feel like, oh my God, then she doesn't really belong here. Right. And
Mhm.
so I started coaching, I started reading, I started running, I started doing all kinds of things. But even though I was getting better, it was still not ideal. And so it was actually a couple of my friends were like, Diana, why don't you just circle back to medicine? Like taking meds just in case. It might work, it might not. Did it work before? And I was like, well, not really. Because I mean, it would work, but it wasn't ideal. But then again, I didn't have the tools to say out loud, to empower myself to say, doc, this is not really working that much, right? And so when I went back, I was able to to start meds again with somebody that I trusted. and and then I started implementing the coaching. So what I noticed was that while medicines were going to help me, it's like the fastest way for some people. 80 to 90% of people, medicines work amazingly, but they work in helping you function, not so much. They help
Right.
you focus, but what you do with the behavior part of it, those require systems of you doing little baby habits that you don't sometimes know to do because of this impulse. Emotional dysregulation that happens, and the fact that we all don't want to feel pain, so we might go for the hanging fruit. Or it might be that everything that's coming at us we can't prioritize, not because we don't mean to, but it's just that to us everything's important, and then nothing is important at all, so we don't do anything. We get like we had the best intentions, but unless you say and this is why then I started to understand, oh, no wonder I don't want to clean, because I feel like I have to clean the whole house instead of like I just have to clean an area of the house, or like just the dishes. Like I want to do the whole kitchen, and it becomes so like overwhelming, because you start doing that, and then of course you're like, oh, but what about the laundry? And you go run and do the laundry, and then all of a sudden you forgot to dry the laundry. And so it becomes like a bad prophecy where you're like, but I really wanted to do that. And
Yeah.
so the point is that medicine, I say, is it's like you being blind, all of a sudden I give you glasses, right? But before you even had the glasses, you needed to know all these other stuff, right? And so um, you needed to drive to the doctor, you needed to be there on time, you needed to get all these other parts to make that happen. It's just not so easy. And it's funny, last week they weren't calling my patients to get like confirmed. And of course,
Mhm.
I had like 10 or 12 like of my ADHD patients not come. And I'm like, well, of course, if you don't remind them, they're not going to remember,
Just
right?
yeah.
And so it just tells you that there's tools that are out there that are meant to support you, not be in substitution for. And so exercise, running, meditation, low carb diet, all these other things can work beautifully in conjunction to medicine. But again, you don't have to be necessarily on medicine, but at least if you get the diagnosis, you can start to ask yourself, okay, how do I do it the ADHD way? And without judging myself that it's different, because it just means like um, you don't have that time awareness. So then I use like a timer so that my nurse can come and knock on my room and say, hey, Dr. Mercado, do you need anything? And at that point, I would say, yes, actually, I need a vaccine, or I need this test done, or actually, no, I'm okay, or please take the patient to the lab, or like whatever, right? So I learned to use it in a way to give me that external cue of time that I don't have. And a lot of people would say, well, I don't, it doesn't matter. But to me, 5 or 45 minutes really feel the same, which is a blessing and a curse. It's amazing if it's you and me talking because you're the most important person in the room,
Right.
but it's not great when you're waiting for me. You're like, where is she? And
Yeah.
so,
I
so
want to be the
that,
most important person in the room for now. It's my turn, right? It's my turn.
yeah, exactly.
So how routine are you? How big of a part of your world are habits and routines? and using your phone as reminders. What are a few of those little tips that you would remind people? You already mentioned exercise and low carb diet, which I would love to have you back on and talk about that because
Sure.
I'm a big believer in that. But how routine are you? And then I've got one more question before we wrap it up because I want to make
Yes.
sure I give you time between now and your next appointment.
Yes. So whether you have ADHD or not, planning is your lifesaver. And I don't mean planning in the terms of like, oh my God, I'm going to map out what's happening every like 5 minutes, but planning the big things that can get us into trouble. So, like a doctor's appointment, right? Or like, paying your kids tuition or your taxes, or for me it was making sure that I had my medical license fees done. Like, it's just funny because they require us to do like the license for like to prescribe medicine, and then the license like just to practice medicine, and then like a certain amount of CME so you can see that there's all these deadlines, right?
Right.
So something that you can implement is the 5 minutes, like 5 minutes every day. Just ask yourself, what are 2 or 3 things that if I did today, like I would think that I'm accomplished. And it doesn't just mean like accomplished as in doing and then I'm worthy, but like I had to go to the point where I was asking myself, what if this were my last 24 hours? Like, would I say that I lived the way I wanted to? And why did I do that? Because it was the stress mechanism that developed when I was in COVID. I didn't know like what was going to happen. Like I showed up, I was one of those that showed up every single day. I never had a day off through all these things. You know, people talk about being home. I never had that. I was always at work, right? And so I had to ask myself, not from that place of like fear, but from the place of like choosing joy. Like, what did I do? Like, did I read to my kids for 5 minutes? Did I make sure to call the neighbors and ask them if they were okay? Like, did
Mm.
I ignore the people that I know drain my energy? Like, what did I do? Right. So, 3 things that were important to me. And then for like the week, I would spend 30 minutes figuring out like what do I need to do this week? Like maybe I have to send a gift, or maybe I have to pay whatever, you know? And then once a month for an hour, I would sit down and figure out, okay, what are the big things that are coming so that it doesn't surprise me. And then I'm like the last minute trying to modify things.
I do business and sales coaching for about 11 clients, and that your template would work for just about anybody, whether they have ADHD or not. Controlling what you can control and then realizing what you can't control is, for some people, you need medications. Other people may need more church, or fill in the blanks there. But I love that. Um, and I said, man, okay. I want to bring you back on as soon as possible, maybe next month, because I have like 3 other main topics. But again, I know you got to go. I want to say, first of all, if anybody's wanting to know if there are differences between men and women, one of the things that I think is clear in this video is that you have multitasked dealing with your 2 kiddos that are beautiful. That is so cool. I've loved to what you have kept your focus and said some great stuff where I would be totally just out of my box. You did great on that. I was like, she's not even missing a beat. That is killer. The second thing I was going to say as we wrap it up, I'll tell you what, let's do this first. Tell everybody where to. There we go. That's right there. See, I would be stiff arming kids. I'd be like, stay over there. I'm busy right now. Hey, so tell me where everybody can find out more about what you do, and then we're going to play a really quick game that's fun. So tell me everybody where they can find out and say, I want to dig into what she does more.
Sure. So I have a podcast. It's called Beyond ADHD, a physician's perspective. And
Okay.
then also I'm on TikTok and Instagram, and it's also called Beyond ADHD. And so they can find me there. But if they want to look at my website, it's ADHD-lifecoach.com.
Yep.
And so my target audience is physicians with ADHD. However, like I said, I'd be glad to come and be a guest coach to talk about anything that, whether it's parenting tips, or whether it's emotions or self-care, whether it's for a school or for your PTO's meeting or whatever, because I think we all need to see that ADHD can be manifested in different ways, and it could be a superpower to have somebody in your team who has ADHD, because we tend to do stuff outside the box, and we tend to regulate things and change things when they're needed. And so yeah, so they can find me and I'd be glad to come and talk to them about that. So one of the questions that you ask about female versus male is that females, most of us, tend to be the inattentive type. And so that's why sometimes they get missed, because they're in the back of the room kind of daydreaming, not causing a ruckus, right? And so that's why sometimes they do so well in some of the topics and then they bomb the other topics. So the other topics that they don't like, or they find boring, or they don't want to concentrate long enough, they might not do so hot. But the topics that it's innate to them, that they're curious about, they might hyper focus. And so that's also why females tend to be diagnosed later in age, usually after the birth of their first child, or after their kid gets the diagnosis, or after they get to college, or they maybe become the CEO of a company, or are all of a sudden having to do multiple things at once. And I think because of society's like interpretation that females should be able to do everything, sometimes females do, and they don't realize they're so exhausted because they just assume that this is the way it is. But my point is, don't assume anything. If you feel tired, go get checked out. Like, it could be your thyroid, it could be anemia, it could be life, right? And so you just got to go make sure that there's nothing else. And if you're not happy with what happened in that encounter, go seek a second, third, fourth opinion, because you eventually will find somebody who listens to what you're saying. Because you have to realize you're the most important patient in the room. You have to be your own advocate, because if you allow others to dictate your life for 2 minutes like they did for me, then 10 years later you're like, oh my god. But this is exactly why I'm doing it. Like, I'm going around and talking about it so that you can see that um, everybody's in their own timeline. It's not that you're ahead or behind, it's just that you did the best that you could with the tools that you had at that time.
That's beautiful. That's good stuff. Can I play a quick game with you before I let you go? You ready for this?
Let's do it.
Okay, I think I know one of the answers because you've alluded to it, but you could only have one of these for the rest of your life. Are you doing pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
Oh, okay. Well, there's no right or wrong answers, but I would have gone with waffles, but that's okay. And I love pancakes. You can only have one of these for the rest of your life: tater tots, onion rings, or French fries.
French fries.
Okay. Beach or mountains? Only one place to go for the rest of
Beach.
your life. Wow. I didn't even finish the question. Your beach, straight out beach. All right. If you are you a reader? Are you a reader like a book? Are you a listener?
Listener.
Yeah, me too. And I want to affirm something you said. I had to learn, if there's new parents out there listening to this, and I raised two boys and a girl, but my middle son did what you did. He learned better. And I had a doctor tell a friend of mine, say, dude, let him walk around the house and read or say things back when you're talking to him and to give him the quiz. Let him walk around the room. Because I would get frustrated. I'm like, dude, sit down, study. And what I didn't realize is them sitting down and study wasn't helping him, is making me feel good, but it wasn't the best thing for him. So
Exactly.
good job. All right. Let's get on calendars as soon as possible. There's 1,000 things I want to ask you, but you've been really great with your time, and thank you for the information today.
Awesome. So thank you again for what you're doing, because you're providing a platform for people to get information so that they can go and implement it today and start to change and honor the life that they want to
That's
live.
awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. Go enjoy your children. Go enjoy your work because I know you have some clients coming up. Thank you for your time. All right. Bye, Dr. M.
Bye.